Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me this week are two members of my co-host. It's Mozza. How you doing, buddy?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. And Drew, how are you, mate?
Yeah. I've taken a break off for searching for the ref on Sunday. I've come home, but I recommenced the search after we finished filming.
Yeah, it's a busy one, this one, because we have to talk about the game obviously on Sunday. But sadly, we had one of those referees that seemed to think he was the main attraction on Sunday, and it's frustrating to see because he was poor, and not even from a Fulham point of view, he was poor. He was poor. I think both.
He was poor from an Arsenal point of view, and those motherfuckers weren't involved in the game.
Yeah.
I had Gooners tweeting. Pardon me, I'm sorry, but I can't. I had Gooners tweeting how bad he was. Gooners. Just for those of you that aren't up on it, it was Ipswich v Fulham. Arsenal had nothing to do with it. He was that bad. Okay, a team with completely different aspirations on the season were tweeting us about how bad he was. I cannot remember the last time that's happened. He was horrific. But anyway, sorry, Ash, you're still in the middle of the intro. I'll come back to me in a minute.
Yeah, I'll come back to you. We can talk about Mr. Bond in a minute. You can get the cat out and start stroking it as you expect him to die. But we'll carry on. But the game was frustrating on Sunday. We saw the use of the five at the back formation again. We discussed this last week about how we don't really think that works against teams that we are expected to have majority of the ball against. And I think we saw that in the first half of the game on Sunday. But we'll break that down in a minute. Let's look at the actual team though. You know, the starting lineup on Sunday. Drew, looking at that starting 11, were you shocked at that starting 11? Would you have liked to see it different? Obviously, we can talk about the five at the back or four at the back, but you know, what were your thoughts when you saw that team sheet?
Can we start with the formation, Ash?
Yeah, of course.
Because look, I've gone on record, and our regular viewers will know that and this is a hill I will die on. Silver is the biggest asset this club has. I don't care what anyone says. But I was disappointed with the three centre backs for reasons you've already alluded to. No disrespect to Ipswich. I think they're a well-coached team. I think they have a future England centre forward playing for them. I think they play nice football. I think they've bought wisely and they try and do things the right way. I've got no problem with Ipswich at all. But I don't understand why we are playing five at the back against a team that's in a relegation dogfight, because it appears, and I know that it can turn into a 3-5-2, and I know that it doesn't automatically mean that you're being defensive, but we were desperate, in my view, to take the initiative and put more into midfield to support Jimenez up front. And I just don't think we did that. In terms of the lineup, I was not surprised to see Kearney starting, because his performance when he came on in the last game, it was against Bournemouth, he turned back the clock. But I do wonder if the impact he had against Ipswich either lends strength to the argument that he's better off deployed as an impact sub, or it might be indicative of the fact that Ipswich, and I'm not criticising them for this, had no less than 10 men behind the ball every time and relying on Delap as the out. Elsewhere, I think a lot of the lineup was predictable. Obviously, we are struggling at the moment through injury. So Castagno obviously came in. Wilson, I don't think anyone would begrudge starting. And quite frankly, to be fair to him, if it wasn't for him, breaking forward, we wouldn't have won the penalty that we did. But I just feel that when we're favoured, like we were against Ipswich, and teams are going to come to Fulham and defend, and we have to accept that because we are considered to be a decent Premier League team. The onus is upon us to apply pressure, and I think that we should have gone with what we're used to playing. You know, the 4-3-3. But yeah, I mean, it was what it. I was disappointed, but not surprised, if I can put it like that. Really.
Yeah, that's it for me. Obviously, we can look at the fact that there was two contradictions in formation. What was working with the five at the back is that we were having a lot of success at getting the ball out wide. But it's pointless having Castagna and Robinson being able to bomb so far forward out wide if there's only one player in the box. And when that one player in the box has got 7 defenders around him, he hasn't got a chance. And it was pointless. And the fact that we didn't change it at all during that first half was a bit mind numbing. And if you had told me after 30 minutes that we were going to go in 1-0 down at half time, as a Fulham fan watching that game, I would have went spot on. We're going to go in 1-0 down because we were never going to score. And you knew Ipswich will. You knew we know what we're like, and they'll have one chance and they'll score for it. It's exactly what happened. Ipswich scored the second time they went into our box, and that's worrying defensively. And we can talk about the mistakes in the defense, and Calvin Bassey. As much as I love him, and I do love Calvin Bassey, I've never hid that. Whatever he was attempting to do with that ball when he was trying to clear it before it was then taken under control by Smolix to score is beyond me. He must have been looking. He must have been thinking that he'd already made the pass before he kicked it because he missed it so badly, and then was just unlucky that the ball hit him before it went in. You know, we didn't deserve to go in at half time 1-0 down, but we didn't deserve anything to score either because we just didn't show any shape. It's a real concern to me, Mozza. I don't know if you agree that we seem to have a real lack of impetus, especially in first half games, of getting players in the box to get on the end of these balls. That Robinson's crossing is improving, no end, but it's pointless if it's improving if there's no one in the box to try to score. Like it's getting really frustrating. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, there wasn't an awful lot I saw in the first half. I just wanted to quickly, before I answer that question, just want to quickly touch on what you're saying about Bassey there, because I've watched that quite a few times. I think where I'm probably trying to play good cop, it looks like it's just a big old miss kick from him. He's trying to clear the ball out, misses it. It's not like him to fumble it like that usually. And then he's got those 5-6 yards between him and Smodic. So you can see him sort of stand off and wants to get his body blocking the ball. Unfortunately, it comes off him and it's into the goal. But yeah, totally agree with you anyway. As for our crosses into the box, do we have the aerial attack? I know Jimenez is known to get his head on the end of the ball, but lest we forget, our goals from this game came from 2 penalties. And it goes back to what we were saying in our end of year review when you asked me, what do I want to see from Fulham going forward for the rest of the season? And I said, we need a proper strike force. And we will go into this later, I'm sure, when we talk about the subs and what happened in the second half. Again, a lot of work outside of the box. I really want to see more challenges and just like taking the ball on the inside of the defenders of the team that we are playing and having a shot. We just can't seem to get the ball away. An awful lot of what I saw at the game yesterday, Sunday, a lot of the players just couldn't get the ball from under their feet. So I don't know why that was. Everyone has bad days, but I can't really put my finger on it.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. Ultimately, we know from the 2 games we played against Ipswich now they're a tricky team to play against. And Kieran McKenna, I've got a lot of respect for him because I think that he does an amazing job with what he has available to him. But we were the home team. We should have been showing impetus, and we just lacked any form of end product. It just felt like we were never going to score, and it did feel like the only way we were going to score in the game yesterday was from the penalty spot, which is exactly what happened. Obviously, let's talk about the 3 controversial moments that happened in the first half of the game yesterday. Trying not to start off about the referee just yet, but we will do. The first one is obviously clearly the Harry Wilson being taken out by Leif Davis. yellow card because they believe that the covering defender was going to get to the ball. I don't think the covering defender's got a chance in hell to get catch up with Harry Wilson now. I know Harry Wilson's touch was slightly heavy, but Harry Wilson's pace is going to get into the end of the ball. So to say he isn't last man and stopping a goal scoring opportunity is beyond it for me. Drew, you probably would have had a better view at the game than I of it. What was the feeling inside the ground about the actual incident? Because I can't understand how it wasn't a red card.
It was difficult because I saw Harry play it, and like you say, I thought it was a heavy touch. And I think if he'd been sent off, I don't think it would have been overturned because it wasn't clear and obvious. But then conversely, the fact that he only got a yellow card, I can see it. I can see it both ways. It was the real issue for me in terms of, and I do digress slightly, but it chimes in on what the question you just asked, Mozza, is the fact that came about because we had someone breaking from deep to get beyond the centre forward, and it caused them complete panic. And we don't do that enough. And what was clear that once they were having trouble handling that or dealing with that, we didn't do it more often because we got 2 penalties. They picked up a number of cards. It's not a stretch to imagine that eventually one of those cards would have gone from 1 yellow, 2 yellows to 1 red. So, but going back to the actual incident, it's difficult. I can see the argument. Obviously, everyone around me was screaming for a red card. But when I saw it live, I did just wonder if he put it too far ahead. That was my instant reaction. I got to be honest, and I can see it argued. I can see it argued both ways. It is difficult, but I'm not as I actually found the Wilson penalty to be more egregious. And Ash, I don't want to steal your thunder because I know you're going to come on to that. but my initial reaction, emotional reaction, was much stronger to that than Harry going through. Because that to me was clear and obvious. Sorry, mate.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm sure both of you might have seen Match of the Day where they were comparing it to our game against Liverpool when Robertson got sent off for a similar challenge, being the last man, but the ball was it was played across goal. Whereas this game against Ipswich, Wilson's got the ball and it's going more directly towards the goal. Whether he's going to get it or not in both instances is like up for debate. Yet one gets a red card, which seems a bit more harsh, and this one didn't.
It's perfectly.
Yeah,
I think perfectly valid.
I think one of the major issues is consistency in refereeing, right? And we'll talk about this. We'll talk about this in the second half because there's a few incidents that happened. The second major incident that happened in the first half, which is going on to consistency in refereeing, is the potential handball that happened in the box from an Ipswich point of view. Now, I've seen it about 5 or 6 times, watched it on replay about 5 or 6 times, and I sit on it in the sense of it's handball. Now, the reason why I'm sitting on that fence and saying it's handball, I'm willing to put my head above the parapet and say it, is because the defender's arm is in an unnatural position to start with, and he moves his arm towards the ball. So, for me, it's a handball for those 2 factors. Your arm shouldn't be out there already, and then it shouldn't move towards the ball if you're trying to keep it in a natural position. We see it all the time in football these days where defenders are very quick to put their arms behind their back to say that they're trying to hide it away. He did the complete opposite. And then literally half a second later, we have a player taken out in the box. So it's 1 second.
Ash, you've turned into a.
Yes,
that's right.
That's fine. Yeah, and then literally half a second later, we have a player taken out in the box, and and that potentially could be a penalty too. Although that would have been soft for me because the defender's really just stood his ground and there's a coming together. That's about it. But the handball to me is shockingly bad because it's like the defender's hand is not in a natural position. He's moved it towards the ball. I don't know if you guys saw that when you were at the game. You know how what your thoughts of it were. I know it's quite a tight incident where it happened in the box, but considering how clear the referee saw Liam Delap's penalty in the second half, his Hawkeye should have seen that completely. But then considering the fact he didn't see a player get kicked 10 yards in front of him, I'm not surprised that he hasn't seen anything. So, it is one of those things, but, it's one of those ones that if we're wearing a red shirt and the top of the table, we'd probably get that call. But because we're not one of those teams, we don't, and that frustrates me as a football fan more than anything. We go into half time, obviously 1-0 down after Smolik scores. We didn't even think Smolik was playing this game. I was under the impression he was still out injured, obviously incorrectly. As soon as I found out he was playing and not injured, I knew he was going to do something in the game, and he takes his goal well. But at half time, we go in 1-0 down. Drew, what's the general feeling around the ground? Being 1-0 down at half time.
I thought. I mean, I didn't see us scoring. I got to be honest, I didn't see us scoring. I thought Ipswich. It was going to be. I thought it was going to be 1-0 at that point, and I thought it was going to stay like that. It was. I mean, Ipswich. I mean, they weren't as bad as Southampton offensively, but let's be honest, they didn't really do much until the second half when they hit the post. But yeah, it was just deflating because it was Wolves again. I know that we were heavily down then, but it was Wolves again. It was Southampton again. It's bottom of the table teams that we should be put into the sword, and we just weren't. And of the play that we had, I mean, we had more of the ball, but I couldn't remember any real clear-cut chances. It's not like we moved. It's not like we moved Ipswich about and we opened them up and they were scrambling for their lives, because they weren't. They looked quite comfortable. Greaves, their centre back, I think is a massive signing for them, and I think he's really good. Davies, obviously, I mean, he walked a fine line, but he's a good player. But we just didn't put them under any real pressure, and that was what was disappointing. And it was kind of, I suppose, Fulhamish, I guess. I mean, people sitting around saying we've seen this so many times before, especially off the back of the Southampton game, which was just deflating. And the Bournemouth game, again, one of our centre-backs gives the ball away and they equalise. And it was just rinse and repeat. That was the problem. And I think it was psychological as much as anything else with the crowd around me anyway.
Yeah, obviously we start the second half. We do what we were all sort of in our group chat talking about wanting the change, and we change the formation up. Issa Diop comes off, and I felt Issa maybe a bit hard done by being the defender that was taken off in the game, because I felt like he actually, out of the three of the defenders that were on the pitch, was probably having the better of the game. I thought Anderson was struggling a little bit with Liam Delap. Every time Liam Delap had to win the ball, Liam Delap did win the ball. But maybe that was just because Diop wasn't the player who was man marking Liam Delap, and he was just doing the mopping up behind. Why he looked a bit more comfortable. Smith Rowe comes on. I know Smith Rowe's been out injured, and we all know that he's a confidence player, and he's still trying to build that up. I don't really know what he changed in the game when he did come on. It's a bit frustrating with him sometimes, but I think he needs to build up his confidence. He needs to get back in and playing. We then sort of play for 20 minutes at the half, pushing but not really pushing. Ipswich were more in the game at this point, mainly because we weren't overloading the wings, because we'd obviously lost the extra man out wide. So Jedi and Timmy Chestnuts weren't so far out wide, so they were a bit more compact. So, the Ipswich were having a bit more luck on the counter attack than they were in the first half. And then we look into making some more subs in the 63rd minute when Tom Kearney comes off and Iwobi comes off, and we bring on Pereira and we bring on Muniz to see us change formation again. And for the first time this season, as far as I remember, I don't know, you guys might be able to correct me, but I think it's the first time this season we've had two strikers on the pitch at one time. It was a positive move attacking wise. You know, Mozza, what was it like at the game? You know, did we look more positive going forward with having the two strikers on the pitch, or did it look like it was more slightly desperation at that point already, or was it just, you know, it looked a bit better trying to go forward?
I'd say, well, what my feeling was, it wasn't desperation, and yes, I could be wrong as well. I was shocked that we had two strikers on at the same time, because I was trying to think myself, has this happened before yet this season? It came across to me as like, right, let's have some balls about us, no pun intended, and go for it here. You know, we want the win, we need the win, and that was something that actually surprised me a bit about that decision. But I was all for it. I can't remember what else you just asked me. Sorry. About the subs and what else. My mind is going 100 miles an hour because there was so much that happened.
Did we look like we were slightly more in control going forward after having two strikers on the pitch, or did it just look like there was two players trying to play the same position?
A bit of both, like peaks and troughs, really. Just as in the first half, there were moments where we played back awfully deep, an awful lot of hairy moments, giving the ball back to Leno and such. But then there were moments where we would come alive and we would push forwards. The second half did seem a bit more like that to me. Yeah, but still, there was no sort of end product. You just mentioned ESR coming on as well. He was a non-starter for me, and that was my biggest fear about him when we signed him. There was a moment where he got his head on the end of a cross. I can't remember who sent it in, if I'm quite honest, but he couldn't even get it on target. It went right past the goal. And at that moment, in my head, I went, right, this is a club record signing. You've got to be getting that sort of stuff on target at least. And apart from the cross that he later did to Raul, which then ended up in us getting a penalty, that was it. But then again, I assume he didn't calculate that we would get a penalty from him crossing the ball to him. So I was all for Muniz coming on, and I was happy about it. But it didn't really seem a whole lot different to me. And proof is in the pudding here. As I said earlier, both of our goals came from penalties in the end.
Okay, now let's talk about 90 seconds of the maddest football I remember in a very, very long time. Starting off with our non-awarded penalty by the referee, Darren Bond. It's the clearest kick up. Like, Harry Wilson's clearly kicked. Like, it's clear. It's not even like slightly obvious, and he has a clear view on it. So how he hasn't seen it is beyond me. Drew, talk me through that 90 seconds. Talk through our penalty, their penalty, like the farcicalness of ours having to go to VAR. What was it like? I can't even explain how poor it is that the referee hasn't given the first penalty in real time.
It was so obvious. Our penalty was so obvious. The fact he didn't give it, he actually looked corrupt. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I don't, and obviously, oh, you're biased, you're a Fulham fan, blah blah blah. I understand all that, but it was just nonsense. It was just nonsense. I mean, that was the thing that seemed to really draw the ire of the Fulham fans, because at that point he seemed to be actively refereeing the game against us. It was just ridiculous. My fear was that when it went to VAR, he would stand by his own decision, because he seemed to conduct himself. He seemed to reek of arrogance, quite frankly. He was awful. I mean, people have criticised Wilson's response and his reactions, and he should have got booked for that, or he should have got sent off for that, blah 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 blah. But it's very difficult when you see such blatant injustice, and it wasn't a mistake. I mean, it was unjust, and I use that word deliberately. The only way I can rationally describe him making the decision he did was that it was corrupt. If it hadn't been for VAR, he wouldn't have batted an eyelid. It's just because he got the call from upstairs, and it's and it's the reaction. It's things like that that really send people off the deep end and actually create an environment and an atmosphere in the stadium that could go from heightened to frenzied to people losing their mind and doing stupid things. It was ridiculous. And I appreciate I've talked for more than the 90 seconds of mad football you want to talk about. And then the Delap penalty. I couldn't believe it. I mean, you know, Fulham fans with cooler heads than me said there was some contact, and Delap did what he did. But if you look at the two decisions and look at the certainty with which he dealt with both, when one was a blatant penalty and one looked like Delap had fallen over a blade of grass, you can't explain that. I just cannot explain that. It was like to me that he was actively trying to. And I don't often say this about referees, so I don't like talking about him. But he seemed to be trying to put Fulham in a position that they would definitely lose the game. It was nonsense. It was such a contrast. One that was blatantly a penalty. Even Ipswich fans would tell you it was a penalty. Ours was. And then the Delap one, where it was naive by Castagna, but I mean, it was pathetic. Bear in mind how big and powerful Delap is. But it was, like I say, it was the certainty he dealt with both decisions. You know, it demonstrated clear bias against Fulham, in my view.
Yeah, well, this is the point I was trying to say. For me, they're both penalties, right? The Lat one, he barely gets touched, but he goes down, he makes a meal of it, and he gets it. But he's touched, and at the end of the day, it's a foul in the box. It's a penalty. I'm not arguing the case of it's a penalty. My problem here is how it appears that Darren Bond's gone to Specsavers between our penalty being given by VAR and their penalty being given, and considering it's 23 seconds after ours has gone in the net that theirs is given, is shocking. We talk about consistency in refereeing, we talk about consistency in decisions made during a game. It is frustrating to see how he didn't give it. And I know refs these days will turn around and say that, you know, if I make a mistake, VAR's there behind me to correct me, which is fine, right? But how certain he was waving Fulham players away. No, he didn't touch him. He didn't touch him. You know, Harry Wilson, yes, I know AJ's not here, and AJ was the one who, you know, jokingly said yesterday, if you want to know how bad he is as a referee, the fact he didn't yellow card Harry Wilson for calling him a fucking cheat says it all. It says it all about how incompetent he is as a referee, because it should have been the yellow card for dissent right there. And then it's frustrating. You know, and then we get the last penalty at the end where, you know, Leif Davis is left tired leg and taken Rail down. Rails also made the most of it, but his contact is a penalty we score. The game finishes 2-2. But for me, you know, it's one of those weird games where both fans probably walk away disappointed in a draw because they've led the game twice and probably felt they should have won. And we go away frustrated with a draw because, you know, we felt that we were getting some really dodgy calls during the game. And I will make a point, because I know there'll be Ipswich fans if you are watching this, and, you know, you'll make the point about the referee and yellow cards given during the game and yellow cards not given. You know, there were some real moments in that game, which the fact that I didn't see any action from the referee was a bit mental. 3.5 seconds into the game, Sasha Lukic gets taken out by a player. Nothing comes from it. Nothing happens. Nothing said. Sasha Lukic during that game made 5 fouls. How he wasn't yellow carded, I don't know. And that's coming from a Fulham fan talking about a Fulham player, because he was consistently, and they were professional fouls, shall we say? You know, like Johansson would have been proud of those sort of fouls. That's how bad they were. And then, you know, Ipswich, they get 5 yellow cards during the game, but they're all cynical little fouls. And then obviously Pereira gets yellow carded mainly because of the way he goes in on his tackle. My frustration of the referee yesterday wasn't the decisions that he made or didn't make. It was the way in which he did it, and it was the way in which he went about it. He looked like he had no control of the game, and I wouldn't mind, but this is not the first time that Fulham have had a problem with Darren Bond. I don't know if you guys remember when we played Derby the year we beat them in the playoffs, but it wasn't the playoff game; it was the normal league game during the season where Ryan Sessegnon was completely taken out by a player after going clear in the box and no penalty was given. That was also Darren Bond who didn't manage to see it. So maybe it's just he goes blind as soon as he looks towards Hammersmith. I don't know, but it's one of those things that it's frustrating from a football point of view because Ipswich fans should also not be happy about the way that match was ref yesterday, because there were decisions given against them that I thought were harsh and a bit silly. And it's one of those ones where sometimes you watch a game of football and you feel like the referee is trying to become the centre of attention, and he's just there to make the game go smoothly, and it was frustrating to watch. Guys, let's finish this pod how we always finish the pod when we talk about the games. Let's talk about honourable mentions and man of the match from our point of view. It's a bit of a tough one. I think the man of the match is an easy one to give, but we'll go from there. Mozza, let's start with yourself, mate. Give us some honourable mentions from the game and your man of the match, please.
You won't like me saying this. Apart from the massive error that Bassi made, giving the first goal away, I thought he had a pretty good game other than that. And I know I'm going to sound like old Dicey here, aren't I? With what he's just said over the weekend about Everton's run. They're good. It's a good form if you add wins to it. And all that. Anyway, so Bassi would be my honourable mention. My man of the match is actually Wilson. As Drew mentioned earlier, he kept driving forwards. And we need more of that. I want to see more of that. And I think he is really proving the point here that he said the other week after the Chelsea game, that he doesn't want to be seen as an impact sub. And again, I think he proved it in that game. So that would be my man of the match. Can I just also do something a little different and give my worst man of the match? Look, I want to see Ipswich do well. I think they're a good squad. I don't want to see them go down this season. I don't think they will. But I've never seen a keeper waste as much time in a game, not that I can remember, as Walton did. And maybe, again, this is a knock at the referee. But the amount... did he even get a yellow card, Walton? I don't think he did. The amount of times the ref let that go and he was taking the right piss. But you would. If he was in a Fulham shirt, I wouldn't be complaining. But, yeah, Walton... dirty devil.
Yeah, we won't even talk about the fact that he double-handled the ball at the end of the game because he caught it, dropped it, and then picked it back up again. But these are things that, like foul throws in football, they just don't get noticed anymore, even though they are technically break the rules in the game. And as we said earlier on, a referee can't spot someone getting kicked from 10 yards. How is he going to spot that from 40? Is one of those things. Drew, how about yourself, mate? Give us your honourable mentions and your man of the match for the game.
Honourable mentions. Wilson, clearly, in my view. Defensively, I mean, it sounds strange, but they really didn't have a huge amount to do. I mean, it wasn't like they were under pressure all the time, which makes it all the more galling. I mean, Jedi ran hard without making a huge impact. I mean, man of the match has got to be Raul, because he was tireless, and his penalties. I mean, my heart did sink when we got the penalties, because I believe Pereira was on the field at the time, and he's been our designated penalty taker. You two laugh, but I'm seriously, like I've said before, I think Silva's biggest asset the club have got. But why on God's green earth, when we have Raul Jimenez in our team, and Sasha Lukic, who takes penalties for Serbia, and we had Pereira designated as our penalty taker. I was, do you know what I was having visions of, Ash? Do you remember a couple of seasons ago when Kamara physically took the ball out of Mitrovic's hands, and we couldn't believe what we were watching? Yeah, none of us could believe what we were watching. I was watching Raul, and I was sitting there thinking, for the love of God, Raul, do you not give him that ball? I thought his penalties were, especially the second one. I mean, he's just complete ice. Other honourable mentions, really, Iwobi ran hard, but I mean, it was a nothing performance from Fulham. Nothing performance. We didn't really lay a glove on Ipswich. And as Mozza's quite rightly said, without Wilson driving forward, and to be fair to Harry, it's difficult to do when you're on the wing. it's not really Kearney's game, and love him as much as I do. I mean, age has caught up with him, and like I say, we still missed a Carvalho type player. So yeah, I mean, Wilson, honourable mention, Raul, man of the match.
Yeah, I think it's hard to sort of argue with any of that. You know, for me, the only honourable mention really is Darren Bond, isn't it? You know, he wanted to be centre of attention. He made himself
Dishonourable
centre of
mention.
attention. He had more impact on the game than some of our players. You know, so well done, Darren. You're a complete twat.
Even
But
Keith
we'll go
Hackett
from
thinks
there.
he's a bell end.
Yeah, like we'll go from there. But my man of the match is obviously Raul. You know, congratulations to Raul, obviously as well, becoming the Premier League's all-time leading Mexican goal scorer. You know, it is a good thing for him to have. You know, and to be proud of that fact. So we'll keep going with that. And the fact he's now scored 11 out of 11 penalties in the Premier League as a player, you'd think that he should be our designated penalty taker going forward because he just looks so calm on the spot. You know, gone are the days when you watch our big number 9 put the ball down for a penalty and don't crap yourself because it's going to go 15 miles wide. But those are the breaks, guys. Thank you very much for joining me on this episode. I know it's not been an easy game to review. We did very well not to go off on the referee as much as we could have done and should have done. I thought Ipswich made a really good game of it. Ipswich, if you're an Ipswich fan and you are watching this, good luck for the rest of the season. I like Kieran McKenna. I like you've got some really good players in that squad. You played somewhat the right way considering the way you were set up. So we can't really argue those facts. But we'll go from there, guys. We have an FA Cup game coming up on Thursday night against Watford. We may well do a preview for that one. We haven't quite worked out between us. We'll let everyone know if we decide to do that or not. I don't know if you guys are going to the game. I'm not going to the game because I refuse to pay the prices they set it for a Thursday night. In the FA Cup, but we'll see how that is for the club. Other than that, thanks very much for joining me and come on, you Whites.